Today's terrifying review is on the McFarlane Toys, Clive Barker's Tortured Soul Series 1 Venal Anatomica. Before we get some closer looks at Venal Anatomica, let's get some dimensions going. The figure stands at 7 inches tall. It seems so strange when it comes to the month of Spotober that McFarlane Toys and this channel seem to go hand in hand every single year. I try to get a McFarlane line in there, and this year is no exception as we have a look at the Clive Barker Tortured Soul Series 1. And in this instance, we have Venal Anatomica. Now, I don't know if it's actually Venal Anatomica, as it's V-E-N-A-L. It could also be Venal Anatomica. But here we have this fantastic looking figure. This is really a spectacular sight to see, combining two of my favorite things growing up. Of course, Clive Barker and McFarlane Toys. And the happy marriage between the two gives us this beautiful specimen. Beautiful, and yet does live up to its name, heavily tortured. It is of fairly mild articulation, doesn't really have much in the way of posability to it, but we won't get to that just yet. Why don't we bring the camera up first, and let's have a look. We'll kind of start at the head, and we'll work our way down. Now, no strangers, I'm sure, to horror films will also know Clive Barker as the man behind the Hellraiser legacy. And I think this particular figure is a good way to start because it does hark some very strange resemblances to that of the Cenobite Chatterer, which you can really see, and I specifically really saw that in the face portion of the character. Now, he does have this kind of like clear dome over top of his face. It is a slightly translucent plastic, but not enough that you can really see much in the way of the interior of the sculpt. You can kind of make a little bit of the eye area of the face, but most of it is pretty shrouded over this plastic dome. The dome does have a little bit of texturing to it, and it is a little on the difficult side to get actually on his head. You can see one large bolt actually running itself straight through, which is really clever because this part is going to be removable and it's connected by this chain here. But they've done a great job of actually making it look like this big long metal stake is running right through his head, sticking out the back or the under area of his neck. You can see how all like these little leather kind of straps are holding down the lower jaw portion. Just beautiful, and it's hard to say a figure is beautiful when it's this grotesque, but it's a fantastic looking sculpt. We're going to go ahead and take this off, and again, it's just a plastic dome. One stress should be made is when you're taking it off, be careful of the little chain here. These are chains, but they're not the strongest of chains, so when you do take it off, just be mindful that you don't rip that off in the process. And here is what the figure looks like underneath. And funny enough, the reveal is already there when you get him in package, that he has the dome already off. So you see the face basically as what you see right here. You get a little bit of the skeletal interior there, and some nice little like flesh-like gashes on the sides of the head. These sunken-in eyes are a nice touch as well, really giving it that sense that it's skeletal. And you can really make out, too, how like the lower half is still of that flesh, and that the top half has now more the exposed, again, the skull exposed of the top portion of the head there. Got some stitches going down here. Like, these are one of those figures that if you could sit and look at them, and you'll always find something new about the figures themselves. So you got some nice stitch work going down here. Kind of looks like there might be a little bit of an indication of like a barbed wire wrapping around his torso. A very long skirt, very reminiscent of like the Cenobites and the Clive Barker designs from the Hellraiser movies. Long skirt, and you've got these little hooks and little spiked, almost little spiked maces sort of thing hanging down. Relying on the same chains that he's holding his, of course, his crown or dome up attached to his shoulder. Got a little hooked, kind of, almost has like a fishing hook sort of end to it. All these little implements of torture that these characters can inflict on not only themselves, but also to their victims. You got all these little spikes sticking out from the hand portion, like all these little bolts and nails that have been driven into the arm portion. The blood is a nice touch, of course. It gives it that sense that it's an agonizing, impact, that these are impaling themselves, or in this case, like this blade attachment, looks like it's actually come, I don't want to even dare say come out of his arm, because obviously just the nature of how long that is. So it looks like it's probably been bolted onto his shoulder. You could imagine that he would probably be able to like run and then just like slice this along whatever he's fighting or inflicting damage towards. Got some spikes running down the little leg area too. Most, if not all, the figure is either flesh tone or it's this kind of black coloring. And like the back here especially reminds me of the Sleepy Hollow Headless Horseman. Just kind of reminds me of the cape on the Headless Horseman. It's got some nice texturing here. And the back, for some strange reason, reminds me of like a xenomorph. Just fantastic, fantastic looking details. Doesn't come with any sort of accessories. I guess if you want to technically count this ball and chain, which sits loose, it actually just attaches to the little forearm area here by a little plastic loop. And I guess theoretically what you can always do is just kind of have the ball and chain just draped over his hand, which is kind of what I did initially. Again, something that he could be using as a weapon sort of thing. It looks good like this, but in all honesty, I do think I like the dome a little bit better. And just kind of show you how everything comes together. You kind of have to line everything up from the top. In other words, like put this front piece on first and then just kind of wedge it down so it gets a good sealed. Still doesn't always give you a completely sealed finish. You kind of have to kind of push down the sides. But I prefer like this look myself over having the dome completely off. Just something I prefer myself. Posability on Venal Anatomica. The head is on just a straight rotation. It only rotates actually from the neck area. Hinges back and forth there. The arms, and don't worry, the arms I'm being very careful with. I don't want to make the same mistake I made with the Michael Myers. The arms hinge forward and back, not too overly complicated there. Swivel in the arm, and then also swivel in the hand. So, you can kind of have the hand slightly gripping up like that, which is really a nice effect. I might even use that maybe for the thumbnail. Also, this arm here swivels. This hand here also swivels, but it's strange, really, McFarlane, once again, the logic behind articulation on these figures, because you got the swivel on the hand here, but then you've got a swivel on the mid-forearm here. Doesn't seem like any rhyme or reason. I mean, like, the hand doesn't look like it would... I guess they didn't want to have it because this little hook here could hit this hook and could limit the way you move the hand, so they ended up having the articulation here. Doesn't make really much sense to me, but as it is. I thought he might have had articulation in the waist. I can't move it. I'm not going to entertain the idea of trying to move it just in case it does break. And then you've got just mild articulation in the legs. Nothing in the feet. He does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. I mean, he doesn't really technically need a display stand. I mean, as you can see here, he stands perfectly fine on his own. He doesn't really necessarily need a display stand. But he does come with peg holes on the undersides of his feet, just in case. All these figures are technically numbered, so I did do these slightly out of sequence. Venal Anatomica is figure number 5. Technically, we could look at Agonistus, or Agonistus, I think is how you pronounce it for figure number 1, but generally when I think of the tortured soul figures, surprisingly enough, either this figure or Lucidique is usually the two figures that I think of when I think of this particular line. So I kind of wanted to look at this guy first. I don't know if I'll necessarily do these much in the way of the sequence that they've basically assigned the figure line. I'm just going to kind of pick out the ones that I like more so, and we'll probably end up doing those as the first couple of videos. As it stands for Venal Anatomica, however you would want to pronounce it, it's still a beautiful looking figure. And I know I say beautiful, it's really hard to kind of look at a gruesome sight like this and think beauty, but really I appreciate the kind of sculpt and care that McFarlane used to put into their figures. And I don't really feel like he puts as much of the care into his figures now as the creativity that flowed back in the day. Maybe a line like this may not have flourished all that well now, but I think back then, this was really when McFarlane Toys was at its peak. Of course, we're going to have a look at the entire wave of the Tortured Soul line, so certainly stay tuned for that. In the meantime, today's terrific review, we're having a look at the McFarlane Toys Clive Barker Tortured Souls Series 1, and this was actually figure 5, Venal Anatomica. If you guys like this video, certainly hit it with a blood-curdling like down below. It's the same like, I've just added that for spooky effect. And if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe to this channel, what exactly are you waiting for? Hit that little subscribe button down below. You won't miss a beat when it comes to regular videos, and of course the regular and the spooky videos that are all lined up for the rest of Spottober. And there's still going to be a lot of videos happening during this month. As always, guys, thanks for watching, as you always do. I'll see you next time.